I don't know how they could expect that after all of this time, we would still just be silent if there is an active role that the firm is playing in perpetuating falsehoods about us. And if that comes with risk of losing things, I mean, there's a lot that's been lost already.
The fallout from this tell-all interview with Oprah has been nonstop since it first aired on Sunday. Prince Harry and Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, repeatedly referred to the royal family as the firm. It's a term first attributed to Queen Elizabeth's father, King George VI. Reportedly, he said, quote, "We're not a family, we're a firm." You may have had a point. Just Buckingham Palace has more than 400 employees, from the private secretary to ladies-in-waiting and chauffeurs and gardeners and communications advisors and many, many more. And it has a number of constituents, including one that has proven toxic to Harry and Meghan, the tabloid press. How does the firm work? And if it is beholden to the tabloids, then who really has the power? Here to break it all down is Chloe Pantazzi, Lifestyle Deputy Editor for Insider. Chloe, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So what is the firm? That is clearly not just a euphemism for the august grandeur of the royal family. This feels like a corporation that has interests that transcend even the people within it at the time.
Yes, it can get very confusing, and a lot of people have had questions following the interview where Meghan was referencing the firm. So, put simply, the firm is a nickname for a core group of people, both inside and outside the royal family, who are tasked with protecting and managing the royal family's reputation. So, it's constituted not just of senior members of the royal family, but also with communications and PR professionals. So it's interesting because not much is known about the firm, and it isn't something the royals have really discussed. So the fact that Meghan mentioned the firm, some found actually quite insulting, because it marks that separation from the family and shows that, you know, there is this business at work that people aren't quite aware of, and Harry and Meghan really drew attention to that.
Who runs the firm? Who is in charge? Is it the Queen or is it someone else?
So to understand the firm, we have to kind of backtrack a bit. The firm is part of what is called the Royal Institution. And the Royal Institution has hundreds of members who play different roles. The Queen is at the top of the Royal Institution, and this, of course, is comprised of royal family members, but also, again, has everyone from palace aides to communications as part of this group. And within that institution is the firm. Not much is known about the firm in detail, because so much of the royal family's inner workings and business is really shrouded. And it's interesting too how the tabloids really played a big part in this interview, because it was suggested, heavily suggested, that this relationship between the royal family and the tabloids has been very symbiotic and a business-like relationship. Within the firm itself, it's important to know that there's an inner circle that's known as the Firm of Aides. As of December, this was announced. So the Queen is obviously part of this inner circle, as is her son Prince Charles, his wife Camilla, the Queen's grandson Prince William, and his wife Kate Middleton.
Right.
The Queen's youngest son Prince Edward, and his wife Sophie, and then Princess Anne. Interestingly, Prince Philip is not part of this because he retired from royal duties. So the senior members, the senior working members of the royal family are part of that inner circle, and they are the ones who are often making the decisions. And as you mentioned as well, that these private secretaries have a really big role to play, and often are the ones that are pulling some of the strings in the royal family.
I found the Oprah interview fascinating. I watched it twice. I told all the producers of the show, you need to watch this interview, because they do a lot of things right in terms of television and how you produce a 2-hour program that just kind of sucked you in. At least it sucked me in. But it leaves me still with a lot more questions, namely what this is all about. I mean, the relationship between the tabloids and the monarchy feels sometimes symbiotic, but often parasitic, and entirely, or at least largely, about money. I mean, when the royal wedding happened between Harry and Meghan, that was estimated to bring $1.5 billion to the UK economy. By one report, the firm contributed an estimated $2.7 billion a year to the British economy before the pandemic. I don't want to believe that Meghan Markle was kind of treated with such contempt and at times outright racism because this institution had a bottom line to worry about. But I have no evidence to the contrary. I mean, is it just that simple, or is there more to it?
I think, as we saw in this interview, Meghan's experience of royal life was very unique. A lot of people have drawn parallels between Meghan's experience and Diana's experience, and while I think that's very valid, we have to remember that Meghan faced racism, blatant racism from the UK tabloid media. And we saw this so clearly in headlines. And as it has been shown, we've seen the royal family does not often comment on stories or allegations, but they have chosen when to intervene in the narrative. And they did not choose to do so with Meghan, according to her account. And, looking at just the plethora of coverage that Meghan faced, negative racist coverage in the UK tabloid media, this was unacceptable, and I think that really was their breaking point. This story that Meghan mentioned, where it had been reported by the tabloids that Meghan had made Kate cry the week of Meghan's wedding over a flower girl dress. And, Meghan was painted as this bridezilla. And Meghan says, well, actually, that was me. I cried, and Kate made me cry. And she, I forgive her, and it was just this thing. We've moved past it.
Yeah.
But they decided not, and by they I mean the royal institution here, it was decided, according to Meghan, that they would not intervene. And they didn't intervene because we did not hear anything to the contrary. One thing that really took me, not by surprise, was alarming was, so much we thought we knew.
It is such a fascinating story. I never thought I'd be interested in the royals until I saw Harry and Meghan's wedding and ended up watching the whole daggone thing. And now to see this turn of events, I hate to say that it's saddening but not surprising, just given the insidious nature of racism. But I am fascinated to see what happens from here. Chloe Pentazzi from Insider, thanks very much. Appreciate you making time for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank all of you out there.
Thank you as always.
Thanks to you at home.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you so much for letting us into your homes during these extraordinary times.